Hello, and welcome to another episode of Finding Mr. Height, the podcast. I am your host, Allie Jackson, and I am bringing you my positive and practical approach to dating, relationships, and a whole lot else about life based on my lived experience. Thank you for being here. Thank you for almost 5 years of this podcast. I cannot believe it is about to be our 5-year anniversary. And if you haven't heard, I am doing a listener appreciation 5-year podcast anniversary party in New York City at a bar called The Folly, which I really like a lot, on Saturday, February 28th. Doors open for public podcast listeners at 8 p.m. Patrons can enter at 7. I'm going to have a bar tab, first come, first serve. So patrons will get first dibs on it. I will add a little bit more for public pod listeners, though, at 8 o'clock. Entry is free. All you have to do is RSVP in order to get a wristband for that bar tab. And you can do that at tinyurl.com/FMH5years. That's the number 5. I'm just so excited to celebrate with all of you, or some of you, hopefully. I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be so much fun. And I just cannot believe that it has been 5 years. That is crazy to me. Last week, we were in Mexico City, Skyline and I. We are now back in New York City for the foreseeable future, doing a couple little day trips here and there, but not really traveling in earnest until April. So I'm looking forward to being home for a little bit. If you are watching the video, if you're watching on YouTube, by the way, because reminder, the podcast is now on YouTube, you will see that I am on my couch in my living room and not in my recording studio. For some reason, little drummer boy, which is what I call my neighbor's, or Erica made up that name actually, my neighbor's son, he is home from school for some reason today, and he has been drumming up a storm. And normally I could text her and be like, hey, but we'll just be in the living room. It's fine down here. The lighting's great. Thank goodness for portable microphones. So we did this long weekend to Mexico City. If you have not been to Mexico City and you're looking for like a great long weekend, especially destination, cannot recommend it enough. I love it so much. It just has this energy to it. I fell in love with it when I was there on my Finding Mr. Height girls trip in 2024. And I just knew I needed to go back, to the point where I've decided that I'm going to do the early bird add-on days of our Oaxaca trip. I'm doing the Oaxacan coast in November as one of my Finding Mr. Height girls trips. I've decided that we're going to do the early bird days of that trip in Mexico City. Most people have to fly through Mexico City to get to Huatulco anyway. So I thought it was a great opportunity. It's on a lot of people's sort of bucket lists, and it should be. So separate from that, highly, highly recommend Mexico City. I'm going to say this out loud so that it has to be true. I did a blog post about our 4 nights in Mexico City, and the blog is live. You can check it out. findingmrheight.com/blog is where you will find all of my blog posts, of which there are not yet many. But one of the things that I want to do this year is get back into writing and really just talk about the things that I like to do, the places that I like to go. And this is a first step in that direction. A lot of new stuff going on. YouTube, long form content, trying to get back into blogging or into blogging in the first place, and trying to be okay with not knowing how to do stuff right away. So that is hard for me, but I am working on it. So if you are also someone who struggles with not being good at something right away, or gets frustrated when something takes you a long time, the first, second, third, fourth time you do it, we are in this together. That thing for me currently is long form content. So the pod is on YouTube, as you know. That is much easier because we've been doing videos of the podcast on the Patreon for a long time now. So it's, something that already existed, and we're just putting it in a public place, and there's a little bit more production involved, but it's not like reinventing the wheel. What is brand new for me is long form content, like my content. So I did my first one in a very long time. I'm looking for comfy work from home pants. I've talked about this on the pod before. You guys gave me so many good recommendations, and I tried them all on, so many of them. I had like over an hour of footage, cut that down into an 8 or 9 minute YouTube video. And that is live if you want to check it out on my YouTube channel. I'm probably also going to cut that down into like shorter clips for Instagram, TikTok, etc. It took me so long to edit this video, you guys. Like, I can't even explain how surprised I was. So all this to say, this is your permission to be bad at something, because I am currently very bad at editing long form content, especially considering how good I've gotten at editing short form content, which I exclusively do on my phone. Like YouTube videos, it's very difficult to do on your phone due to the orientation of it. It's much easier to do on the computer, but I am not yet good at desktop editing, so we're working on it. So we spent 4 nights in Mexico City, 3 full days. Like I said, it is the perfect long weekend destination. There are direct flights from a lot of US major hubs. We went through Atlanta because we bought on points, but there are direct flights from New York. There are direct flights from a lot of big airports. I would love to spend more time there, don't get me wrong, but I also feel like you can get a lot done and you can get a really lovely sense of the city in a long weekend. We had a really good mix of having reservations, but also leaving space to wander and find cool stuff, which I think in a city like Mexico City is key. So on our first night, we did the like fine dining experience. We went to Puyol, which I probably butchered that pronunciation. I literally just called before I recorded the restaurant to hear them say it and did my best impression of how they said it. It is like one of the Michelin starred, I think it has 2 Michelin star restaurants in Mexico City. The last time I was there, I went to Quintonil, which is another one of those sort of fine dining, multiple Michelin star restaurants. I loved my experience there. It is very expensive, like several $100s a person for the tasting menu. It was awesome, not actually necessarily because of the food. The food was really great. Don't get me wrong. The food was really great. I think the food is better at Quintonil. I also think the food is better at Maximo, which is another really nice restaurant, and also Maroma, where we went on our last night, which is more casual. But the service and the whole experience, 1,000 out of 10. Like, I don't know that I would prioritize going there again. I probably wouldn't. And if you were going for a long weekend, I definitely wouldn't say, oh my God, you have to go. But it was so cool. Just from the moment you walk up and they recognize you by face because they have you submit a photo with your reservation. You don't have to, but they greet you by name immediately just upon seeing you. From that moment through the whole service, it's just magical. And the food is really, really good. It is excellent, but it's not like the best food I've ever had. But the service, so like it's kind of hard for me to contextualize it in my mind because for that price point, you want the food to blow you away. So that's why I'm like, I probably wouldn't prioritize going there again, but I'm really glad we went. Like both of those things can be true, I guess. Like, as an example of the service, they have it's very open air, the restaurant. One of the things I love about Mexico City is there is so much open air. Most restaurants have outdoor seating. A lot of restaurants have mostly outdoor seating. It's so much open air. The weather permits it, but it's beautiful. So a lot of it's open air. And when you enter the restaurant, you walk through their terrace area. And we were seated inside. It was like a little chilly that night. As we were walking through the terrace, Skyline and I were talking to each other like, oh my God, the terrace is so beautiful. Like, I wish it were warmer out. Like, it would be really lovely to sit out here. There was no one sitting out on the terrace. Everyone was inside. It's so beautiful. And we go inside, and it's beautiful inside as well. And we have our meal. And then right before dessert, our server came up and said, would you like to do your dessert out on the terrace? We turned on the heaters. Oh, what? Yes. We had not asked for that. We didn't even know they heard us say that. Like, it's not like we were like, oh my God, I wish we were sitting outside. Fuck the inside. We were just remarking on how beautiful it was. And they heard that and went out of their way to make the terrace seatable so that we could sit out there, and other people moved out there too. It was just so lovely. It was so lovely. That's just one example of what I mean by the service was 1,000 out of 10. And so that experience was really cool. If I were going to go back, I probably wouldn't do it on our first night there. We were very tired. We woke up extremely early because we had connecting flights, and the altitude kind of gets to you too. So I probably wouldn't do it on the first night there, but it was wonderful. It was lovely. Every single part of our trip was awesome, except for one day I had very, very brutal PMS symptoms, which we'll get to in a second. But overall, it was really great. Wandering around different neighborhoods. We stayed in the Condesa neighborhood, sort of on the border of Condesa and Roma Norte. I'd probably stay more central Roma Norte the next time. That's where the girls and I stayed the time before. And I think that was a little bit more walkable to things that we wanted to do. I loved the Condesa neighborhood and how beautiful it was. We were staying right around the corner from an awesome wine bar called Hugo that we really loved. All of my restaurant recommendations and bars and stuff are in the blog post, so you can check that out. But I just really recommend it. It was really cool. We spent a day in the Coyoacan neighborhood, which is where the Frida Kahlo Museum is. We were there on a day it was closed, but it was just beautiful, really colorful neighborhood. And then also we stumbled upon a tamale festival that was happening in the Coyoacan neighborhood. Turns out that there is a Mexican religious cultural celebration called La Candelaria, which I feel very bad as a partly Mexican and sort of Catholic, was raised Catholic, I suppose, person that I didn't know about this. but it marks the end of the Christmas season. It's on February 2nd every year, which is the last day that we were in Mexico City. And it is where it's the presentation of baby Jesus at the temple, and people bring their own baby Jesus from their homes to be blessed. And so we saw people on the subway we took the metro to Coyoacan. We saw people with their baby Jesus dolls. We weren't sure what was happening, so we looked it up. And then when we got there, we found this big tamale festival that happens every year around this time. And it was so cool. Like dozens and dozens of tamale vendors from around Mexico, and like people like eating at communal tables. And honestly, one of the best bites that I had was the tamale that we split from that festival. It was so, so good. So I think that's just like an example of what I mean by how important it is on trips, but especially in a place like this, to have time to just wander and explore and discover. Like that was our favorite day of the trip by far. Also because the dinner that we had on our last night at Maroma was epic. Every single bite was out of your mind good, out of this world good, blow your mind, whatever. I combined those two phrases. It was so good. So you can see all about this, read all about this rather more on the blog post if you want to hear more about Mexico City, but it was just incredible. Such a great trip. Those PMS symptoms though. Oh my God. So I posted about them while we were there and didn't realize how many other women experience PMS the way that I do. I thought I was like a unique little snowflake. No, I thought that I was like weird, honestly. And I've talked to a doctor about these PMS symptoms before, and that doctor said that they are like not common necessarily, but very normal. I got so many DMs from you all about how many people experience PMS this way. So here's what happens to me. Not every month because I don't get a period. So it's to use a period related word, spotty. But I get like feverish when I am experiencing PMS. So I have a very deep lower back ache. That is my hallmark PMS symptom. It's one of the reasons I went on birth control, hormonal birth control to begin with when I was 19-ish, is because of that PMS symptom where my lower back aches to the point where it's like I can't get anything done because it aches so badly. So that happens to me almost every month still. It's just not as bad. But also, in addition to that, when I'm having bad PMS, I feel like I'm getting sick. I feel feverish, like I'm hot and cold at the same time. And my skin has goosebumps and it hurts. My skin hurts to the touch. And it's the exact same way that I feel when I'm getting sick. Like that is how I feel when I'm getting sick. And the only way that I know that I am not getting sick and that it is PMS is because of that lower backache. But I forget about that every time because it doesn't happen every month. I'm looking into ways to track it, like apps that don't require you to be getting a period, like Clue, but it's a little overwhelming to me. It's brutal when I do get those symptoms. And I really hate when it happens on a day that I'm like trying to have fun and do something like, being on vacation. Here's something new that I learned though. So we landed in Mexico City on Friday afternoon, and pretty much from the jump, from Friday evening, I was sneezing like no other. And I am a sneezy person. I will have fits of sneezing. I will sneeze 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 times in a row. It's something that it's happened to me my whole life. Maybe not my whole life, actually. I don't remember it as a kid. So I think it's hormone related. Spoiler alert. It is not really related typically to a particular food. It's not really seasonal. Like I haven't been able to pinpoint ever in my life why I am so sneezy. And it's not all the time, right? Like it's not like, oh, spring comes and now I'm sneezy. It's random. At least I thought it was random. So we land in Mexico City and I am all of a sudden sneezing multiple times in a row, getting so stuffed up, crazy. We looked it up and we're like, oh, are there different allergens? Of course there are, right? But like, what do you think? Maybe I'm allergic to something in Mexico City, but this didn't happen the last time I was here. So maybe it's seasonal. The internet was saying that winter is the dry season. And so there's like different allergens versus when I was there before, blah, blah, blah. So Friday, I'm very, very sneezy. Saturday, I begin experiencing some of those PMS symptoms a little bit, and I'm still sneezy. Sunday was my major PMS day, still sneezy. Wake up Monday morning. We're going about our thing where we have lunch. It's like mid-afternoon, and all of a sudden Skyline goes, "You haven't sneezed once today." And I realized he was right. And so I started looking into that, and it turns out that hormones can affect histamines, and that a lot of women experience that when they take antihistamines, it helps with their PMS symptoms. That is not medical advice. I'm going to be talking to my doctor about this. This is just something that I am very recently discovering. I had literally no clue that my sneeziness could be hormone related, could be related to my cycle, could be cyclical in that way. Like, to me, it's felt random, but maybe it's happening once a month and I just don't realize it because I had never made the connection. Just yet another example of women's bodies being something that we don't know enough about, even as women, especially as women. Like, there just isn't, that's not common knowledge, right? Like, it's apparently a very much a thing, and a lot of people know about it. A lot of you DM'd me that, like, you found out that was a thing too. No one told me. No one's ever asked me, "Hey, do you sneeze a lot?" I've also never mentioned it to a doctor, and I probably should have. Though, just being realistic, they probably would have not connected it either based on my all the other experiences. So I'm just like going down this path. I'm just like, I feel like I just took a string and started pulling it out of a blanket, and all of a sudden the string is like 15 feet long. So one of the things that I am going to be doing is I am looking to get a more specialized gynecologist in the city. Hopefully somebody who can specialize in perimenopause, but definitely somebody who's just more specialized than my PCP, who I've been seeing for women's wellness, who also does have a gynecology specialty, but it's just not his main thing. So I want somebody who's a little bit more specialized. Ideally, I'd like to see a woman as well. I love my PCP. He's wonderful, but I would like to see a woman who is a little bit more specialized. So I'm going to be looking into that. I just, it consistently blows my mind how much I am learning about my own body through my own research. Like, that I'm having to say to a doctor, "Hey, I think this thing might be related to hormones." And they're like, "Yeah." Crazy to me. So that came to light. Luckily, it was only PMS. That particular PMS symptom for me usually only lasts about 24 hours. So I felt completely fine when I woke up Monday morning. And it just continues to reiterate how important it is to understand your body and like the symptoms of your body, which like I don't understand them very well clearly yet. I've been working on it for almost 39 years, and here we are. Because it was so crazy to me on Monday to realize how horrible I felt on Sunday in contrast. Like, I knew on Sunday that I felt shitty. I knew on Sunday that I felt feverish, that I was really sluggish and tired, and I didn't really want to do anything. And I was kind of forcing myself to do things because we were there, even though Skyline was 100% fine to like sit in the hotel and, rest, which we did for a while before dinner. But I wanted to push through. Like, I was on vacation. And I didn't realize until I woke up Monday feeling great and we were out and about on Monday and I was feeling great, how horrible truly I had felt on Sunday, like in contrast. It was only in hindsight where I was like, "Oh yeah, I felt like shit yesterday. Oh no." So just I guess a PSA to just think about all the things that are happening with your body and maybe they're related. And interestingly, something from last week's main pod came up during all of this time when I was feeling like crap. I used Anna's advice. So last week on the pod, we talked with Anna about conflict and about bringing up hard conversations and, doing it in a way that like frames it for your partner and hopefully doesn't make them get defensive. Like I just loved the conversation with her. One of the things specifically, one of the pieces of advice that she gave for the other direction, when your partner is telling you something that, makes you defensive or, it gives you a certain negative emotion or whatever, is to name the stories that are happening in your head out loud for the other person. And I think that's really good advice even outside of conflict. And it's something that has helped me a lot, but I never really thought about it in that specific term until she said it that way. And I did it with Skyline while we were in Mexico City, and it worked wonders. So on Sunday, I was feeling like shit. Skyline was very supportive and very clear over and over again, saying to me, it's okay if you want to go back to the hotel. If we just I'm happy to just hang with you in the room and rest. Like, we don't have to do these things we plan to do. I won't be upset. I promise you, it's okay. He was so reassuring. I didn't want to, though. I wanted to push through, right? My brain knows I'm not feeling great, knows my personality was not sparkling, right? Like, I was not as good of a companion as I normally am. That's just objectively true. Not that he was telling me that, but it was just objectively true. Like, I was not as engaged in conversation. I wasn't having as good of a time. Like, I just wasn't as fun, right? Which is fine. I felt like shit, but it's just true. So the story that my brain was telling me was that because I was acting that way, and I'm putting it in quotes, that he was going to be resentful of that he was going to be resentful that I wasn't contributing to the vacation, that I was ruining the day for him, that he wasn't having fun with me. And that is not true. That is a story that my brain is making up, particularly because PMS for me also includes anxiety. And I named it out loud for him, coming off of that advice from Anna. And I said, the way that I framed it was, this is not me looking for reassurance right now. You've given me plenty of that. This is not me looking for reassurance. I think it will just help me to say out loud the story that my brain is creating. And here's what's happening in my brain. And this isn't anything about you. It's not on you. I don't need anything more from you. I think it will just help me to say it out loud and to process out loud how silly it is. And it did. It really did. And it also just was cool to be like, I just learned about this week and here I am implementing it. So I can say from personal experience that naming the stories that your brain is telling itself out loud, even if you just do it to yourself, but especially if you do it to the person, if you open up to the person that the stories are about, so helpful. And again, maybe you do want reassurance about the story. That's okay too. In this moment, though, I really didn't. I knew logically, rationally, I didn't need him to reassure me further. He'd already done plenty of that. It still helped to name that anxiety out loud, to name that story that my brain is telling me out loud. And I think that anxiety, I think, goes back to a lot of how we are socialized as women, that we need to keep the peace, that we need to be pleasant and agreeable and nice to be around, lovely to be around. And when we are not those things, it butts up against this idea of what society has told us we need to be as women. Even if the person that you are with is not doing that, even if they don't think that, even if they are not doing anything to reinforce those limiting beliefs for you, it's still there, at least for me. And naming it out loud was really helpful. And I wanted to share that with you as a result. And then one other very fun update that happened on the way home from Mexico City. So as I've mentioned on the pod before, Skyline and I very much wanted to move in together before getting engaged, getting married. And that was something that was important to both of us. And we've been talking about what the timeline of that engagement looked like. And we decided that we wanted to get engaged this year in 2026, which is very exciting. And I've been talking a lot about it on the Patreon if you're interested in the nitty gritty details. But I'd say this now as an update because we are starting our ring shopping journey. We've made some ring shopping appointments for the month of February. I'm so pumped. I'm pumped to see what I think I want on my hand, in addition to things that I don't think I want. I want to kind of try on everything. If you're interested in what I'm looking at and kind of all the details of that experience, I'm talking way more about it on the Patreon per usual. But that is the update. The update is that we are going ring shopping, and I'm so excited. I'm really excited to do it with him. I know that's, I don't know if controversial is the right word, but just maybe divisive is a better word. Not everybody wants to do that with their partner. Some people want to be fully surprised or give them ideas of what they're looking for and not go with them. I very much want to go with him, and he's excited about that too. I just think it sounds so romantic. and special. And I still want the proposal to be a surprise. I've said before, I'll say it again. I think an engagement should not be a surprise, that a proposal can be. And it's just really fun. It's really fun to do it together. And I certainly want to have a very, very heavy amount of input into this expensive thing that I'm going to be wearing on my hand for hopefully the rest of my life. And I'm just excited. I'm excited. So that's that update for you. And before we get into questions and also one update from a prior question for this Hot Topics episode, our media mention actually was inspired by a question that was submitted to the Patreon. So on the Patreon, if you don't know, I do an extra episode every week for the $7 tier and 2 extra episodes a week. One like shorter bonus episode, extra for the $10 tier. And a lot of times that main Patreon episode is an Ask Allie Anything episode, and the patrons have a dedicated question form that they can submit to. And one of the questions that I got in this most recent Patreon was about letting your partner fail at something. And it was inspired by a TikTok that the listener had seen from a creator named Paige Turner. I've mentioned her on here before. She's incredible. Her handle is at This Is a Paige Turner, Paige spelled Paig, like her name. She's on TikTok exclusively, I think. I tried to look her up on Instagram and didn't immediately find her. So I think it's mostly a TikTok thing. Generally speaking, she talks about the mental load. She talks about her marriage a lot and her kids. It's only her, though. She doesn't like show her kids and stuff, which I also appreciate. But she talks about her marriage and parenting and how they share the mental load and how they haven't always, and how they went through a very difficult time in their marriage where she very seriously considered divorce because of the way that the mental load was falling within their marriage. And in this, so I recommend her, generally speaking, shout out to her channel. This week's media mention in particular is about letting your partner fail. I think more so, I also kind of thought about it as letting people fail. And she talks about a moment where she and her husband were both aware of some of the requirements for their kids' snow stuff at school, like when their kids are bringing snow stuff with them to school. The school had emailed both of them about what's required for that. And she had read that email and internalized the requirements, and he did not appropriately read the email and internalize the requirements, and took on the task of gathering their snow items and did it in a way that didn't work. And how they kind of talked through that and how it now looks different. So that happened last year. How it looks different this year, or looked different this year, because of the conversation that she had with him last year after she essentially let him fail. After she essentially said, yeah, you take this thing on. I'm not going to micromanage you and give you the information that you also had access to. And we'll see how it turns out. And in this case, it didn't turn out great, and they had to have a conversation about it. And so in this Patreon episode, I talked about sort of my thoughts on that video, but also a specific scenario that the listener had sent in. And I just really recommend this video and that series in general about the mental load, because I think it also gets into not just how to talk to your partner about ways that they're not like meeting your needs from a mental load perspective, but also how to talk through situations where they were really trying to do something and it didn't hit the mark for XYZ reason, and kind of thinking about in your mind how to frame that for them in a way that is going to continue to empower them to be independent. And like, there's so much in this, right? There's so much to unpack here, because there's a very strong piece of me that hears this and is like, I'm not his mother. I don't need to tell him how to pack the snow stuff. Like, he should read the email and just know how to do it. Like, yes, that's true. Also, though, if you want to have a collaborative relationship and it didn't happen in that way, what is the way that you can have a conversation about it to avoid that feeling for yourself in the future? Like, sure, you could just be like, fuck this. And if your partner is consistently failing, quote unquote, at these things and not adapting and not stepping up, then yeah, that probably makes sense. But in a partnership that is very collaborative and where they very much are attempting to show up in this way and consistently improving at it, like, how can you foster a good dynamic back and forth with each other? So that is the recommendation media mention for the week. I will mention it in the show notes as well. I will also post it in my story when this episode is live so that you can see it there, and I'll save it in the recent podcast episode highlight. And now let's get into listener questions and updates. Okay, we have 2 updates or feedback and updates from listeners to chat about. The first is about our listener story time with Allison that was a few weeks ago. This listener says, honestly needed this episode. I'm 39 female in a relationship with a 50 male dad. I'm very much like Allison. I'm okay not living together until the youngest is 18 and off to college next year and want engagement. And 2 of my best friends sat me down saying these things about my partner, who I'm 100% treated wonderfully by, and I'm sure he's my forever. They simply don't get that relationships can look different. I needed someone in my situation to tell me I'm right, and thus this works for us. Very happy to hear that. The episode resonated with you. I got a lot of similar feedback via DM, etc. So thank you for that. And then our second submission is actually an update from Anna. And I answered Anna's question on the 20th Hot Topics episode, which was on November 10th, 2025, if you want to go back and hear that. Anna says, update. Hi, Allie. I asked a question in November about dating a guy I really liked soon after a long-term relationship ended and being unsure if I was ready to go into another relationship. Your advice to think about what I was actually worried about really helped me, as I realized I was carrying a lot of guilt from the end of my previous relationship. Some just from the fact that the breakup hurt both of us, some from my behavior. I didn't communicate as well or as soon as I would have liked to when I realized the relationship probably wasn't fixable. However, I'm in therapy to work through the feelings of guilt and try to ensure I can show up how I want to in the future. Your discussion of how some of your therapy work has only really been able to show up in your relationship also really resonated with me, as I realized I will have to put in the work in practice. Having reflected and committed to doing the internal work, I decided I wasn't going to pass up the opportunity to be with a great guy because of the guilt I was working through, and the guy I was dating is now my boyfriend. P.S. I remember to write this update after listening to your episode with April Beyer. When she was talking about relatability, it really described what I love about my boyfriend. Oh, Anna, I'm so happy for you. That's awesome. And I'm also very happy that my answer was helpful for you and that you're able to kind of work through that and continue to. All right, our first listener question is about losing interest after the chase ends. This listener says, hi, Allie. So grateful for the way you articulate things that I felt but couldn't name. I've noticed a pattern in myself where I feel very engaged and interested during the early dating phase. But once someone clearly expresses consistent interest and availability, I start to feel bored or restless. I don't sabotage things intentionally, but my excitement drops off, and I start questioning whether I actually like them or just liked the chase. I'm trying to figure out whether this is an attachment thing, a compatibility issue, or just me not meeting the right person yet. How do you suggest unpacking this pattern without defaulting to self-blame or forcing feelings that aren't there? So first of all, I'm really glad that you're noticing this pattern for yourself and trying to think about whether it could be something related to how you're viewing early dating versus getting a little bit more into a relationship. Because I think there is something inherently, I'm not, boring is the wrong word, but when something gets more stable, it is by nature a little less exciting, right? Like it's exciting to meet a new person. It's exciting to be learning new things about somebody. And that excitement can continue into more long-term dating, but I think you have to foster it a little bit more, especially if you are somebody who really enjoys that early period. I also want to note that this question did come from a woman, and I think that this is something that women have written in a lot about men from the reverse, right? Like from the woman's perspective of a man seeming to only be interested in the chase and kind of losing interest once she expresses interest and is available. I say that too because I think a lot of people might assume that this question came from a man, but I want to say that to sort of just express that this really isn't a gendered issue, like this can happen to anyone. And I think figuring out whether it is your own attachment that is working against you in this case or a compatibility issue, just like not the right person for you, is something to continue to evaluate as you move forward with someone. Something that I've unpacked a lot in therapy is that I equated that anxious feeling that I had in early dating when somebody like wasn't giving me security with really liking someone. Like I conflated anxiety with excitement. And I'm curious if that might be something that you're doing as well, or if that's something that you've experienced in the past. Or it could be the opposite sort of insecure feeling of that avoidant, right? Like of the beginning is easy. The beginning is just fun. And then when you start to really get into it, things get a little scarier. They get a little more vulnerable. And I wonder if you can identify what you are feeling in your body in that early dating time, and whether the thing that you're feeling in your body is excitement about something new or excitement about that person themselves. And I don't think that starting to feel a little bit bored or a little bit restless in dating somebody means that you need to cut things off. I think that's a feeling to explore a little bit more. I think that that is starting to think about, okay, what am I feeling bored about? Am I feeling like the things that we're doing are getting monotonous? Am I feeling like I'm not excited to see this person anymore? What are the things that are driving me to do that? And can I try to push through them, at least in the short term, to see if it is this person or if it is something that I am doing to myself? And if it's something that's happening over and over and over again, that's when I would start to think about it as a pattern of potentially something that I'm doing to myself and would want to work on within myself. And I worked on that in therapy, of working through why I started to feel like I didn't like someone as much when they were very clearly into me. And I'm very glad that I was able to work through that, because it's the only way that I was able to get into a healthy relationship, because otherwise I would have been totally bored. And I still think about those times when that happened many, many years ago and think like, man, like I could have really enjoyed dating that person probably if I hadn't let myself get totally blindsided or blinded by the fact that I no longer felt that excitement. So I don't think it's about self-blame and making yourself feel bad for this potential pattern, even if it is an attachment thing that's going on with you. I don't think self-blame is the right way to think about it. Like there's a difference between blaming yourself and judging yourself and acknowledging something that's going on within yourself and trying to address that. Because you want to feel excited about the person that you're seeing. You want to continue to be excited to hang out with them, to be excited to do things with them. And you might need to sort of push through that initial feeling of restlessness, that initial feeling of boredom, to see if you can get on the other side of it. And I don't say that to say, force feelings that aren't there, but see if you can push through a little bit to see what's on the other side. I'm curious if you ever pushed through that to see what's on the other side, to see what's on the other side of that consistency, and to try to find excitement and safety in that consistency and think, wow, this is actually exciting that this person is showing up so consistently. This is exciting that this person is so interested in me and available to see me and making time to see me. Like, that's hot. That's awesome. Can you push yourself through that to find joy in that phase? And try. Like I don't think you're not wasting somebody's time to continue to see them for a little while longer to see if this is the right person for you. Like we're not talking years here. Like you're not wasting anybody's time. I think you're doing your due diligence, if you will, and trying to figure out if this is a pattern for you and something that you want to work through more. And I discovered that for me, and it did me a world of good to kind of work through that piece. Okay, our next question is from Emily. Emily says, "Hi, Allie. I love how honest you always are. I recently dated someone who said all the right things about wanting a relationship and being ready for commitment, but as things progressed, his actions didn't quite line up. He seemed hesitant to integrate me into his life or make future plans, even though he talked about wanting a partner in general. It left me feeling confused and questioning myself. How do you make peace with the idea that someone can want a relationship, just not with you, without internalizing it as a personal failure?" This is so, so hard, Emily. I love that you're thinking about this way, because I think we are very quick generally to jump to, well, he was just leading me on. Like he said he wanted a relationship, but he doesn't actually want one. That might be true sometimes. I think more often though, somebody can actively be looking for a relationship, but realize that you are not the person that they want that with. And I think it's important to remember that that happens on the reverse as well. That's happening to you too. There are so many amazing people out there that you don't want to be in a relationship with. And that does not have any bearing on their value as humans. They're great people. You could think about a like super attractive, smart, funny guy that you still don't want to be in a relationship with for whatever reason. Like there's many, many reasons why somebody might not be right for you. That doesn't make them any less valuable as a partner or a person. And that's not a personal failure on their end, right? And I think it's important to remember that from your perspective to try to give yourself more grace in the reverse. That you are not judging the people, hopefully, that you don't want to be in a relationship with or that that aren't right for you to be in a relationship with. You're not judging them as people. They're great. I mean, for the most part, I'm sure there are some people who aren't. They're great. They're just not for you. And giving yourself that same grace, I think, is really important because you're not thinking that about the other people. And that is really hard to internalize because in a situation like yours, at least I'm assuming, you want to progress to a relationship with that person, right? Like this guy that you were recently dating, he said he wanted a relationship. He was, ready for commitment. And I'm assuming you do want one too, and you are ready as well. And you were progressing in a way that you wanted a relationship with him, right? At that time, like you thought he was somebody that you could see a relationship with. And so you were progressing in that way. Meanwhile, he was realizing, it would seem, that you are not someone that he wanted to be in a relationship with. And that mismatch is really hard. Like it is so much easier when you both kind of realize that you don't want a relationship with the other person, whether you've dated or not, right? Like it's so much easier when two people are on the same page to not internalize it as a personal problem. The reality is, it's pretty rare for two people to want to be in a relationship together, for both of them to be on the same page. Like, that's super rare. If it wouldn't, dating would be a hell of a lot easier. If it weren't, rather. If that weren't super rare, dating would be a hell of a lot easier. But it is. And I think remembering that that is rare and remembering that there are people that you don't want to be in a relationship with is so important. And I think it's just all about the communication. It sounds like this person that you were dating was going through questioning whether he wanted to progress things with you, but wasn't communicating that he was questioning that, or wasn't communicating maybe that he didn't want to. Like if he was hesitant to make future plans because he was questioning things. And you were left feeling confused because he wasn't communicating to you how he was feeling in how the relationship was progressing or not. That is the thing that I would focus in on because you want somebody who not only is on the same page as you, but also is able to communicate what page they're on and who is proactive in that communication. And that's not this guy. So you don't want to be in a relationship with him either, frankly. And so you ask about making peace with that idea. I think that's how you make peace with it, is you think about the ways that you want your future partner to behave towards you. You want them obviously to want to invest in a life with you and to move things forward with you. And you want them to be communicating about that. And if they are having hesitations, if they are not on the same page, you want them to be able to talk to you about that. You want them to be able to bring up hard conversations. And if you're left feeling confused, the other person is not communicating clearly. And so the best that you can do is ask for that clear communication, communicate clearly on your end, and look for somebody who can reciprocate that. And that's not this guy. And that is not a personal failure on you. That is just incompatibility with this person. And again, that happens in both directions. And it's not a personal failure on the other person either, right? So remember that. And remember what you are looking for. And that it is rare. And like that sucks. It would be so much easier if it were not, if it were super commonplace to immediately be on the same page with someone and both want a relationship. If that were common, this would be a hell of a lot easier, but it's not. And that is why we are here. So sending you love. I know that is so, so hard. Okay. This next question is anonymous. Hi, Allie. I also follow you on social media, and I recently saw one of your posts where somebody asked about being told they need more, quote, executive presence at work. And your response really stuck with me. I received that exact feedback at work not long ago, and it's been sitting with me. I'm a high performer with strong results, but I tend to be collaborative, thoughtful, and not overly performative in meetings. When I asked for examples, the feedback stayed vague. Things like owning the room more, projecting confidence. It left me wondering whether there are concrete skills I should actually be developing or whether I'm being measured against an outdated idea of what leadership is supposed to look like. I'd love to hear you expand on this idea on the podcast. How should someone interpret this kind of feedback without internalizing it as a personal flaw? And how do you figure out what's actionable versus what's more about bias, optics, or cultural expectations around leadership? I would love to expand on this. So for those of you who don't follow me on Instagram or maybe didn't see this story, last week in one of my Ask Me Anythings that I do every week, somebody asked about getting feedback that they need to develop, quote, executive presence and, how to handle that. And my response was that I hate that feedback. The phrase executive presence is, in my experience, code for you don't look or sound like leaders that I've seen in the past. I being like the manager giving the feedback. And that is so rooted, as this question asker says, in bias, in optics, in cultural expectations, in leaders being white men, frankly. And it is telling to me that this person asking this question says that they tend to be collaborative, thoughtful, and not overly performative, which are massive strengths of women in the workplace. Collaboration, thoughtfulness, not talking just to talk, not just repeating somebody else's idea louder or in a different way. These are strengths of women in the workplace that are often underappreciated and not seen as leadership culturally often. And so that's one of the many, many reasons why I hate feedback like this, because it is often coded in bias, rooted in bias. It's code for you just don't look like a leader. And I hate that. I hate that. I hate that. I hate that. The other reason I hate it is because it is vague. That's something that I thought about a lot as a leader giving reviews, is to make sure that my feedback was specific and actionable, because otherwise it is useless. It is useless if it is not specific and actionable. And that is what I would focus on for you here, listener, and anybody else who has received this feedback. When somebody says you need more executive presence, generally speaking, putting aside for a moment, although we can't really ever put bias aside, but like putting aside for a moment the fact that their view of executive presence is likely biased, if you were to ask them what they mean by that, what they probably mean is somebody who is more confident, like you said, owning the room more, like, confidence and ease in conversation and just projecting this level of seniority is probably how they would say it. That's still fucking vague, right? So what I would say to them is ask for specific examples where you did not display the executive presence that they're looking for and what it would have looked like if you had. Make them give you specific examples and say to them, I really want to implement this feedback. I'm taking this feedback really seriously. I want to move forward at this company. I'm really internalizing this feedback that you're giving me, but I'm having a hard time understanding how to develop that executive presence and what that would look like in your mind. So could you give me some specific examples where I didn't display that and what it would have looked like instead if I had? As you do this, document the hell out of it. And I say that because it is probably unlikely that they are going to be able to give you immediate specific examples because this feedback is vague. And this feedback is, typically speaking, executive presence feedback is just a feeling. They're like, I just feel like you're not very senior. And they probably don't have specific examples for you off the top of their head. Maybe they do. Maybe I'm wrong. But they probably don't. They're probably going to have to go back and come back to you. Document that. Send them an email after you have this meeting. So you got this feedback, right? You walked away from it. You're confused. You're going to send your manager an email, whoever gave you this feedback. You're going to send them an email. You're going to say, I'd love to put on time with you and talk more about your feedback about executive presence. I really am taking it to heart. I want to work on it. And I would love to talk with you more about what that looks like for you. They're going to have to take this meeting, right? If they don't take this meeting, like, go to HR. You are doing this in a written format so that you have all of the proof in the world if and when it becomes an HR issue, which we'll get to. So you're going to write them that email. They are going to take this meeting with you. If they don't, that's crazy, and immediately go to HR. But they should take this meeting with you. In that meeting, which you are again going to document via email afterwards, You are going to say exactly what I just said. Ask for specific examples of times when you did not display executive presence and what it would have looked like instead. The reason that you're going to frame it that way is because that forces them to give concrete examples of the feedback. Not just what it would look like, but how you're not at that place. That is going to be crucial for showing your progress against feedback and against a review. Because my guess is if they're saying that you lack executive presence, they are going to use that as a reason to not promote you. Like they're not going to, typically speaking, promote someone who they are saying lacks executive presence. Like that is a phrase that managers use to say that this person is not ready for advancement. Or perhaps they're ready for the next step, but not the one after that. Like that is a phrase that will hold you back from being promoted. So you want to document as much as you can about your commitment to the change and about the journey from where you're at now to where your manager wants you to go in order to feel ready to promote you. So you're going to ask them for these specifics. They might not have them in the moment. That's okay. If they don't have them in the moment, you're going to send a follow-up email coming out of this meeting and say, hey, so-and-so, thank you for taking the time to meet with me about my review. I'm excited to continue to work on this. Just to recap, we talked about looking for some specific examples where I didn't display executive presence. I'm looking forward to hearing back from you. I really want to work on this. Write everything down because now you have proof that you asked them for examples about your review. And if they aren't able to provide them, you also have proof of that. Okay. Hopefully they can, right? Like I'm not trying to create a gotcha moment for your manager, but I am preparing for you in case it happens. I'm hoping that they have specific examples that you can, and they're doing it in good faith, right? Like I'm hoping that your manager is operating in good faith and actually can provide you with specific examples that you see. Oh, okay. Yeah, I get it. And you can work on it. And then the next time they're like, hell yeah, good job. That is the best case scenario. And I'm hoping that's the case. But we're also going to prepare for the worst case scenario, which is that this is just a bullshit excuse. And I want you to be prepared with the receipts. We're parallel processing here, right? So hopefully they come back with specific examples. And if they do, I'm hoping that they are actually examples that you can take an action on. Not just examples of when you didn't, but examples of what it would have looked like. So an example of that for you is, when I'll make something up. When Mary, let's say Mary is like, some senior person. When Mary asked you this question in the meeting, you appeared very flustered and, you weren't really able to answer her question and your answer wasn't very clear. And it's something that you do know the answer to, or you should know the answer to based on your knowledge of the business. And it made Mary feel like you didn't know what you were doing or like our team wasn't on the ball. Something like that, right? That would be a very good example, actually, of not having executive presence, of getting flustered when a senior leader asks you a question and not being able to confidently and clearly answer the question, or confidently and clearly say, I'm not sure and I need to get back to you. Because that's okay too, right? Like executive presence doesn't mean you know everything. It actually just means that you can clearly and confidently communicate what you do know and what you don't know and what you're going to follow up about. Like if we're getting like to what it actually should mean. I talked a lot about this, by the way, in a recent bonus Patreon episode about giving good presentations. Part of giving good presentations is having executive presence, but like in what it really means, not in what it's coded to mean. So anyway, that would be a great example that your manager could give you. And then you could say, okay, great. Thank you so much. Like I'm going to work on that. And then you are going to write that down in an email. You're going to recap everything via email so that there's a paper trail. And then the next time that example happens or something similar to that happens, the next time that you're in a meeting, let's say that was the example, Mary asked you a question. The next time you're in a meeting and Mary or any other senior leader asks you a question and you respond in a way that you think exemplifies what your manager wanted you to do, you're going to ask for feedback on that scenario. You're going to say, can we talk about how that meeting went? I was really trying to work on my executive presence per your feedback. How do you think it went? And continue to have these check-ins. I suggest a monthly check-in with your manager, no matter what, no matter your feedback, no matter how your annual review is doing. I suggest a monthly check-in with your manager on your development that is completely unrelated to your work product. Because you probably have one-on-ones with your manager every week. I hope you do. Those one-on-ones are likely completely taken up by what's going on in the day-to-day. What are you working on? What projects do you have? You're probably not having time in those one-on-ones to talk about your personal development and the feedback that you may have gotten in the past. So as a manager, I always made sure to have a monthly one-on-one in addition to the ones that we're having about work product to talk about that person's development. If you're not doing that with your manager, I would start. Especially though, if you've received feedback that seems like it could prevent you from getting promoted and moving forward, it is in your best interest to get this going. I wish that every manager was doing this on their own. They're not. So that is how I would piece through getting to actionable feedback. Whether or not the original piece of feedback was well-intentioned and actionable or rooted in bias and optics and, cultural expectations, like you said, that matters, but you are likely not going to change the outcome of the situation without getting to a place where it is actionable. Like, it's probably not going to go anywhere if you just focus on the fact that that feedback is biased. I would start first with trying to get to an actionable place. And if you are unable to get to an actionable place, then you can start to have conversations about wanting feedback that is objective, wanting feedback that is actionable, that is concrete and not vague. That is your right in receiving feedback. And so I would try to get there first. And then if you can't, then have that larger umbrella conversation about wanting that. And if your manager is unable to have that conversation with you, is there a trusted person in HR you could talk to? Do you have a relationship with your boss's boss? And doing that in a way that doesn't seem like you're jumping over their head is a little hard. That's why I would start with your manager and trying to work it out with them before doing anything else. Thank you for asking me to expand on that, because working through feedback, responding to feedback is one of my favorite topics in the workplace. So I was happy to expand on that question from my AMA. Final question for the day, back to dating. Hi, Allie. I'm dating someone who seems genuinely interested in me, but he is terrible at planning. He'll say things like, we should hang out this weekend, or let's do something soon, but rarely locks in concrete plans unless I follow up. When we do see each other, he's present and engaged, which makes it confusing. I can't tell if this is a sign of low effort, indecisiveness, or just a personality difference. How much should planning consistency matter early on, and when does it cross from not his strength into a real red flag? This would bother me a lot, especially if you are coming to the plate with planning. So that's my first question for you. It sounds like you are, because it says you say he rarely locks in plans unless I follow up. So that's telling me that you're following up. So you are doing your job in terms of trying to meet him halfway in planning, right? You're not just sitting back and having him do everything. You're saying, okay, yeah, we should hang out this weekend. I'm free on Saturday. You're doing that part, right? Great. That's my first question, but I do think you are, based on the way that you framed this. The second part, whether it's a sign of low effort, indecisiveness, personality difference, I honestly don't think it matters. I don't really think it matters the why. What matters more is what's happening. What matters more is that he is not making concrete plans with you. He is causing you to go more than 50%, to stretch beyond into his realm, right? To meet him more than halfway in order to get a date with him. And why that's happening, I think, is less important than the fact that it is. That being said, I do think it's something that you can mention, because you don't want to continue on dating somebody who's doing that, really, no matter what the reason is. If it is truly, quote, not his strength to make plans, does that matter if the end result is that he's not making plans? Does it matter whether it's just not something he's good at, or whether he's just low effort? I don't really think so. Because either way, You are deciding whether you want to continue to date this person. I would communicate about it first, though. I would say, and I would do this in person because it sounds like your communication when you're not in person is a little spottier. In person, the next time you go the extra mile to get yourself on a date with him, I would say, I really enjoy hanging out with you. I enjoy the time we spend together. But when we're planning the date, it seems to me like you're not that interested in going on it. Like, is that something that's really happening, or like what's going on there? And see what he says and judge his tone, his facial expressions, his body language. Like, what is this man doing when you say that to him? And how does he then respond? And not only how does he then respond, but how do his actions then change or not to match or not the words that he says? Like maybe he says, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Like I'm just like maybe he says, "I'm kind of bad at this, but like I really like you. I want to see you. Like I'm going to step it up. I don't want you to feel that way." And then he does it, and then he's consistent about it. Fantastic. Or maybe he says, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I really do like you. I want to make this work, blah blah blah." And then he still does the same thing. That's information for you. That is when I think it would start to translate into a red flag for you, because I'm guessing that you don't like the situation that's going on. There might be some people who are okay being the ones who are always initiating plans, right? There might be some people who are okay with locking in the concrete plan all the time. I would not be that person, and it's okay if you aren't either. And so I would be really honest with yourself about that, about whether you are okay with the current dynamic. I don't think you are, or you probably wouldn't have written this question. That's okay. Now you got to communicate about it, see if that can shift. And for that reason, that's why I don't think the why matters as much, because what matters more is, does it change when you say something about it? And how do you feel about it if it doesn't? And I can't tell you how much planning consistency matters early on, like how much it should matter early on, which is your final question. I can't tell you that. Only you can decide that for yourself. It sounds like it matters to you. I don't think you'd be asking this question if it didn't. So I think you've answered your own question there. Now the only open question is whether he can improve in his planning consistency based on your feedback, or whether you are not compatible together in this area. So I will leave you with that. Hope that was helpful, and I will talk to you all next week.